Hey, what's up, Yantaraj? You are on with Yan. Hey, what's up, Yantaraj? We're back, episode number 10. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. I'm so happy to have you come back and listen every single time. I want to start this episode off with a quote, and the quote goes like this: "We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses." And I wanted to start with that quote because in my last episode, I had Dr. Emilia Sharenos on it, and part 2 is on the way for those of you waiting to hear that. But I wanted to hop on here and talk about part number 1 because there were so many valuable key points that were talked about that I thought were very important for me to expound on and hopefully for you to hear one more time. And in a part of the episode, she talked about perspective and how she was able to change her own perspective in order to get to her goal. And for some of us, that might look like changing your perspective to get to your goal so that way you don't feel like it's something that's unattainable. So the example she used was getting into med school or getting through the exams or even having to overcome the obstacle of coming to the States and having to prove herself all over again. And in her situation and position, it could be very easy to sit and say, well, I did all of this, and I don't feel like doing any more. I think I've done enough. And when she talked about shifting her perspective, she said, well, I would compare it to a different scenario that could be going on for somebody else. Maybe they had to overcome some other extraneous obstacle in order for them to even be able to be considered to come to the States. Like, for example, if they didn't have a U.S. citizenship, but they were out of the country doing their med studies, and then when they come to the States or try to come to the States, that's not a sure thing because they have to get visas, green cards, citizenships, and all of those things are obstacles that are out of their hands. And so her perspective shift was, yeah, it's gonna take longer. Yeah, it means I'm not done doing all the work. However, it would be so much harder if I did all of this work, but then they denied me being able to even come into the country. And I say all of that to say, or I reiterate all of the things that she said, to point out the fact that changing your own perspective on something that might be tough or uncomfortable or unpleasant or not fun even, changing your own perspective on something like that can help you shift whether you're looking at it from the point of view that doesn't help you get it done. In other words, if I'm viewing something that I have to do as it is not fun, as it's a lot more work, which in turn makes me procrastinate, makes me not eager to do the task, I have to shift my perspective to say, all right, I've got the control of the situation. I have control over the goal. So if my goal, for example, is to work out 3 days a week, sitting down looking at that on paper sounds like, okay, I haven't worked out before this consistently. I'm not looking forward to it. This is going to be a very tough thing for me to do and to commit to doing. So to shift my perspective, what I could do is I could say, well, if I was injured, if I just had a surgery, then I wouldn't be able to do it at all. If I didn't have equipment, if I didn't have the easy access to the gym, to my own exercise equipment, if I didn't have access to platforms that guide me through my workouts, that would be a lot more tough to get me through my goal. So what I'm saying to you is a lot of the time we have everything we need to get to our goal, and yet we sit there like my situation is tough. And although to you it may seem like, I can't do it, or maybe a better way to say that is not that you can't do it, but you're not eager to go after it because of the circumstances that may make you feel like it would be tough for you, aren't necessarily things standing in your way. It's usually you standing in your own way and looking at it from one perspective, one point of view. So when you find yourself in that situation where you're sitting and you're thinking, wow, it would be easier to just maybe not do it, and you sit and try to find an excuse, you negotiate with yourself an excuse that sounds valid enough that you'll believe. And when you find yourself doing that, I think that's a really good spot to pause and try shifting your perspective. Add something to your perspective where it would make it even tougher to get to your goal? What would have to be going on to make that situation even more unpleasant? And come up with a scenario and then take a look at that scenario compared to the one that you're actually in. And that's where you can recognize like, wow, it maybe really isn't that tough for me to get this done. It definitely would be much tougher and less doable if X, Y, and Z was also going on. And maybe the perspective shift that you're trying to work on doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the goal itself. It might be other life factors that get in the way, like you have to work, you have to go to school, you have to do this, you've got a lot of homework, you have a family to take care of, which all sound like valid excuses. And that's why I say if you find yourself searching for a valid enough excuse that you're going to believe in order not to achieve your goal, or to excuse yourself from achieving your goal because, oh, that's right, I am too busy, it's okay. What you're actually doing is a disservice to yourself. So find a way. And if you notice shifting your perspective helps you, then try to implement that as much as possible into situations that arise that make you feel that you need to find that excuse. And then implement that. I've been thinking a lot about the way that she said that. And I know I've done this, but I don't think I've done this deliberately. What I would like to do for myself is try to make this more of a deliberate point. If I ever find myself thinking of why I can't get something done. And to me, that was a very valuable point that she made. And I hope for all of you listening that that's a pretty valuable point for you as well. Because whether it's work-related goals, family goals, or just lifestyle change goals, whatever goals you may have for yourself, it really does not matter when it comes to this, because you can use this perspective shift in a very positive manner to help yourself overcome some of those things. Because it's when you get into a very excuse-seeking mode to excuse yourself from completing the task, it starts to become very easy for you to believe your own excuses the further you go and get away from why you can do it and all of the reasons why maybe you can't, or why you don't have time, or why it's too tough for you. So I think that perspective shift has been a tremendously important part in her goal achievement, but also for a lot of other things too. She at one point said people argue a lot with one another, and it's because they have a hard time of viewing another person's perspective. And I think this more goes into the way we talk and handle others outside of ourselves, whether it's family or friends or colleagues at work. This part's important too, because if we're able to shift perspective just a little bit, or even just take the time to actively listen to somebody's perspective when they're speaking, it might be easier to understand them. I don't mean to agree with them, I just mean to see where they're coming from. Just because you can see somebody else's perspective doesn't mean that you're going to agree with it. And it doesn't mean somebody's going to agree with yours. But it does help us understand where somebody might be coming from and how they're getting to that point of view that they're trying to bring across. So if we implement that even to just talking to our spouses or our friends, I think it would be a really great way to eliminate some friction that may arise between people so that we can better understand each other and better understand ourselves too, because sometimes you don't really see what your thought process is like until you switch perspectives and look at a different way, and then you think, wow, maybe the way I was thinking about all of this was all wrong, or maybe the way I was thinking about this I didn't realize that's how I think. I didn't realize that I was trying to find an excuse for myself for why it's okay not to get this thing done, completed, or taken care of. And I think that's just such a great thing that she said, and I'm so happy she said it, because I've been thinking about this for like 2 weeks now, just how I can implement shifting that perspective into daily life. And I thought that was very cool. And the quote I read to you, it says it's by Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going to read it one more time since I've just went through this whole explanation. And it said, "We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses." And I think the interesting part of this, or the part that stands out to me out of this quote, is that you can notice the thing that you like and then pick out the things you don't like and dwell on those things. Or you can recognize something that you don't like, but then pick out the really great thing. So for the perspective shift, you can acknowledge why it might not be the most fun thing to do, but then you can notice, well, why is it so much better that I'm in this position versus the perspective shift that you created and compared the two with. So if you have something tough you're going through, or you're trying to work on, or there's a goal you're trying to achieve, and you notice you might, have X, Y, and Z obstacles in your way, but then you sit down and you think, but it would be so much harder if I had X, Y, Z, F, G, H, and C. And you compare the two and you're like, wow, my position is so much better. Even with all of those things, it's okay. I can still make it happen. I can still get it done. And I think finding that positive thing in it is what gets you to the other side, because the more you focus on the negative, the further it takes you away from getting the task completed, the goal achieved. And ultimately, that's what we want to solve. And again, it doesn't have to be goal achievement or completing tasks. It can just be communicating with family, talking to spouses or kids, or even how you talk to yourself about your own situations in life. Sometimes things happen and we tend to be like, oh, my life sucks, and I have this going on, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. But what is right? Yes, all of those things may not be super awesome and fantastic in the moment, but it would be so much worse if this, and this, and this, and this was also going on. So to help yourself shift perspective, add some other stuff that could be going on that would make your situation much worse. And then reflect on how grateful you are that it isn't that way, and that it isn't that bad for you. And although some of the things going on may not be the best, they most definitely aren't the worst. And sometimes that perspective shift is all you need to change your mood and to change your attitude. And when you change those things, the mood and the attitude, a lot of other things change too. And I think that it's very cool that this perspective shift doesn't necessarily have to do with just achieving goals and tasks, because sometimes people don't care about that. But it can also have a lot to do with daily life and the way you look at things, and the way you take things, and the way that you will look at things going forward. Just because you viewed things some way in the past doesn't mean you'll have to view those same things the same way in the future. And the more that we can get ourselves into a different state of mind, the easier that will become. And to me, that was very valuable. The other thing I wanted to touch on is in a part of the episode when she talked about having to study for exams. And when you're in uni and having to study, you're surrounded by your friends, you're surrounded by your peers, you're surrounded by parties, you're surrounded by going out and having fun, making memories, having a good time while trying to relieve some type of stress and get away from the studying and the work and all of that. And she said, you might plan to do this, but then tomorrow's a really nice day, and, well, it's supposed to rain the next day, so why don't I just push it to the day that it's gonna rain, and I'll go out with my friends tomorrow, and the following day, then I'll study. And then that day comes, and, they forecasted the weather wrong. It's going to be actually the following day that it's going to rain. So I'll push my studies off one more day. And it becomes this, there's always tomorrow. There's always the next day. There's always the next day. And I wanted to take that weather piece into account. And in Michigan, where we are, the weather is very up and down, up and down. It could rain tomorrow. It could rain later today. It could be sunny tomorrow. So the sporadic weather, you don't really have. It's, okay, we go out today because we have tomorrow. Or, let's do this, we go out tomorrow because there is no tomorrow. Do it now. Tomorrow, the weather might shift and it might rain and you can't do it. Or it might be nice and now you can't do it, depending on what you're trying to do. And I wanted to use the weather example of switching your mentality of thinking like there's always tomorrow, there's always tomorrow, there's always tomorrow. And no, there's today. There's today and there's now. And we're not going to push it to there's tomorrow, there's tomorrow, there's tomorrow. And shifting your perspective may be able to help you circumvent that thinking process of, well, I have tomorrow, or I have the next day, or I have the day after that. And I think that piece for me was pretty valuable too, because I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of people, including myself, have tendency to procrastinate on certain things that we will have to get done. And so for everybody, I think it's relatable to say there's not always tomorrow. There is right now, and what can you do right now? That when you get to tomorrow, you're going to be like, if I could thank myself for doing this yesterday, or if I could thank my yesterday self, as I like to say to myself, for doing that, I would. And I try to find ways that I can do that, so that way when I get to the next day, I'm like, oh, thank you, me from yesterday, for doing this for me today. It makes life so much easier and smoother when you do that, because so many tasks get in the way, and it's so easy to be like, I'll just do it next time, or I'll do it the next day. There's value in pausing and just doing it now. Just do it now. There's no tomorrow. Tomorrow it's gonna rain, so just do it now. So I think that's pretty cool. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the point of negotiation that we go through. Once we said that we were going to do something, and then that time frame comes when it's time to do that thing, and you start the negotiation internally of, well, my knee hurts today, like I'll just do this small amount. I have this going on now today, so I'll just do this other thing, or I'll push it till tomorrow because I can't get it done, or quite literally any variation that might go on in your mind of negotiating with what you signed the contract with yourself for. So maybe you said, I'm going to work out. Maybe you said, I'm going to eat better. Maybe you said, I'm going to read 10 pages a day. Doesn't matter what it is. You signed the contract with yourself. And when you get to the day, or when you get to that time in the day when it's time to do the thing, don't let yourself negotiate for why you can't get it done. Don't let that conversation happen. And I'm saying this, one, so I hear myself say it, and I'm saying it so that maybe it helps you too, because you can recognize if you do that. I know I do that sometimes, and I know I have to remind myself, like, stop negotiating. You already signed the contract. You signed it with yourself. Get up, let's go. You signed it with yourself, then go and do it. Stop getting into the, well, this happened, and now this, and this. Yeah, remember the perspective shift? Those things may have happened. I'm sure they did. Shift your perspective. How else can you get it done? Go through it, go around it, go under it, go over it. How are you going to get it done? Or are you just going to stop? You're just going to stop right there? No. You're not going to stop right there. You're going to shift your perspective. You're going to get it done. And I try to get myself into that mode, because I feel that when you let yourself have that conversation, the conversation just takes you further and further away from doing the thing you have to do, and it doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit how you feel after not doing the thing you said you were going to do, and it doesn't help you reinforce yourself to do it next time. So it's all minuses against the thing you've been trying to do, the thing you signed yourself up for, the contract you signed with yourself. So get up, let's go. The less conversations like that we have with ourselves, I think the easier it is for us to just go and do it. I think Mel Robbins is the woman that talks about the countdown from 5 to 1, get up and go do it. So if I said, okay, in 15 minutes, I have to get up and I have to start the laundry. And 15 minutes goes by and I'm still, I don't know, on my phone scrolling, and I'm like, all right, 5 more minutes. All right, the laundry's not going to go anywhere, like 10 more minutes. Why does it matter? When you start to have that dialogue, when you start to have that negotiation, count from 5 to 1, get up and go. Don't let yourself think. Don't let yourself find reasons why you don't have to do it, or it's okay if you do it later, or whatever that might be. Get up, go do it now. Don't negotiate the contract you already signed. You already signed it. That's that. Don't make it an emotional, it's black and white. You either go do it or you don't. You sign the contract, go do it. And I say it like that because this is how I talk to myself about it. If I take away the emotional talk of, I don't feel like I want to do it, that's where you find yourself not getting things done that you want to get done, therefore reinforcing your lack of discipline. So if you do it, you reinforce discipline. And the more you reinforce the discipline within yourself, the better you feel about yourself. Your self-esteem tends to rise the more discipline you have, the more control you have over yourself. And the control over yourself is, can you still go do that thing when you said you were going to do? Or are you going to let the, oh, well, I'm comfortable, I don't want to go do it now, get in the way? So, I say all of that to say, once you've set out to do something, once you've signed the contract with yourself, eliminate the dialogue, negotiations about why you won't do it, or why you won't do 100% of what you said you were going to do, or find ways to minimize the work, or find ways to push it off till later. Eliminate the talk. Do the 5-second countdown. Get up and do it. Don't let yourself think about it, because the more you think about it, the worse it's going to seem, the worse it's going to feel, the less likely you're going to do it. So just get up and go. And when you need to, shift your perspective. When you're in a situation that requires some thought, shift a perspective of how your situation would be if 3 other things were going on in your life that were not helping and were actually standing in the way even more, and how much tougher that would be if that was the case. And then reflect on how grateful you are that that is not the case, and then get up and go do the thing. And that concludes today's episode. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for being a part of this podcast. In whichever shape or form you've been a part of this whole journey for me. I appreciate every single one of you that have come up to me and have said really kind words. And as you're listening to this and growing through this, I'm also growing through this. So I want to thank you for being a part of my growth in real time. And I hope that I can serve you with some of the things that you hear on this podcast, and I hope they help you. I know they help me, and I'm still working on all of them. But again, I'm grateful for every single person that listens to this, and all the feedback I receive is very nice to hear, and it keeps me motivated to give more. So again, thank you all for being here. Peace out, Yantaraj.